So today we're in an undisclosed location in California and talking with I hope he's a good friend of mine, Darrell Lane, because he's got a lot of great stories, and he was telling me one here a little while ago, yesterday, about the town that he lives in, how there's all these subterranean catacombs, hidden tunnels that was put in there by the olden time. And so with that, Darrell, take it away and tell us about what you found out about these and how you found out about them and what you found and discovered.
I know a lot about Paso Robles, and it mostly comes from a really, really good friend that I had here that passed away in 2012, and that was Wallace V. Olds, otherwise known as Wally. But he loved history. History was his big thing, and ghosts. Anyways, it was right around 2000 that me and Wally really started being good friends. And the thing was I was drilling Wally because he was not only just school teacher and everything, but he was president of the Historical Society. He was a docent for San Miguel Mission, for the Caledonia Adobe. He knew everybody and his brother that had anything that was connected to the Historical Society and old adobes and all of the history. And he had a memory like most of us wish we had. Like I said, he loved ghosts, and he knew all of the places where all of the ghosts hung out. And what he needed was a buddy to go around with him, and was not necessarily tied down to any time limit. Is pretty much whenever he wanted to go or could get out and everything else. And be pretty much, on the job with him. And he wanted somebody that, didn't poo-poo ghosts or, was afraid of ghosts or anything like that, and could take pictures of ghosts. So I volunteered for the job. So we went to lots of different places in and around the county, but mostly in the North County. And we went to San Miguel Mission many, many times because there are lots of ghosts there, mostly from the Reed Massacre from 1848, I think. December 5th, 1848 is when the massacre took place. And so we went there a lot, and Wally was Mr. San Miguel. And there were lots of places normal people could not get in. There was no trespassing, forbidden, no. That was the answer. All these people gave to everybody, except Wally.
Really?
Yeah. So wherever Wally went, I was with Wally, and we could get into these places.
Cool.
Yeah, and there's a place inside the mission where it's only the Padres go to. And it's a part of this archive room and everything else, and ancient books in there.
Really?
And everything else, yeah. And Wally had the keys to it.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyways, and so that was the type of person he was. And down at the Caledonia Adobe. And so we had a project at the Caledonia Adobe to see if we could get pictures of the ghosts and communicate with the ghosts and everything else. Anyways, and so what we did is we baited the Caledonia Adobe. In some of their display cases, from all of these donations from all of the old-time ranchers and farmers and people of the area, they had lots of the old-time antiques and things of ordinary pioneer life in these display cases. And some of these things would disappear mysteriously, even though the display cases were locked.
Really?
Yeah. And they You know, it was impossible for anybody to take anything, but sure enough, these things would end up missing. And then later on, 2 or 3 months later on, these things would reappear. But not in the display cases, maybe sitting on top of it when the other docents would come in and they would find it, and, you know, somebody brought it back, somebody mysterious. You know. Anyways, and so anybody that worked there knew that there were ghosts there. And so while he was compiling a ghost book on the Caledonia adobe and everything else, and so we baited the place. And so this, and of course he had the keys and everything else, and, you know, he was a docent there forever, you know. We could go there anytime, night or day. And so we baited the place with candy because there's supposed to be a spirit of a kid there. And there's supposed to be a spirit, 2 spirits of 2 men there. Okay, one was shot and killed right on the steps there. Or not this, on the... it'd be the eastern side, okay, and Old Highway 101 ran right in front of it, but that was a stagecoach road then. Anyways, and so there's documented history that this guy was shot and killed right there. And it's one of those, it's kind of like the old Robert Young movie, you know, of where the blood all of a sudden appears on the rug, and they try to erase the blood with some kind of remover, and the blood comes back up, you know. That's the movie with Charles Lawton, you know. I love that movie. Anyways, but it was the same thing there, okay? That on the date this guy was killed and everything else, blood appeared on the steps.
Really?
Yeah. And it's been photographed and everything else, and it only appears for like 2 or 3 hours, and then it disappears.
Wow.
But it happens on the anniversary. Really? Yeah. Anyways, I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
Anyways, and so there's 2 guys that are supposed to be spirits there, and they say 1 or 2 women spirits. So, anyways, so we baited the kid ghost with all these candies. And we not only put these candies in specific places, but we took pictures of where they were exactly and their positions and how far away from the furniture or the wall we placed them and everything. So we did a scientific thing. And then Wally says that the ghosts like the smell of lemons, and so we got lemons, and also the smell of cigars, and so I got cigars. And so while I'm buying cigars, I thought to myself, I said, well, you know, if I was a ghost, I'd really like whiskey, the smell of whiskey. So I got whiskey. And so we set that up, and in another part of the adobe, and we did some other stuff. I can't remember exactly what it was, but anyways, and so they're open Thursday through Sunday from 11 to 4, and I think it was after they closed Sunday that we set everything up, and then we came in and baited everything, and then the following Thursday we came in before they opened, and so it could have been Wednesday night we went over there. Anyways, the candy was gone.
Really?
Yeah. The lemon, the cigars, and the whiskey were still there. Okay, untouched. Not even moved, nothing. But the candy was gone. And the candy was gone for 2 or 3 months. And then half of the candy showed up in other places. Okay, I think we put out 21 pieces of candy, and I think 11 pieces came back.
Wow.
And when they came back, they were all in one pile, in the same room, but they were on a bed. Or something like that. I can't remember exactly. Anyways, then, and this was real close to Halloween. We did all this. And then every Halloween, Wally would have these ghost stories and everything else at the Caledonia Adobe. And, they'd advertise on KPRL and in the Paso Robles newspaper and everything else. But usually only about maybe 30 or 40 people would show up. Sometimes more, Well, that and that following Halloween, it wasn't too far away from when we baited all this stuff. It was like a week or two later, and we still had all of this stuff there. And Wally just, every time he came in, or Joyce, the other docent came in, or Joyce's daughter also worked there. Anyways, everybody would check and make sure everything was there. Well, the night of the Halloween thing, and everything, the bottle by itself flipped off of the bar and hit the ground. There was about 5 people. All the ghost conversations, everything, we had just broken up, and people were gathering around, and kind of there's like a gift shop where you go into the Adobe, and then just inside the gift shop there's another door that goes into the museum area, and it's also a 2-story. And so there was 4 or 5 of us inside the gift shop, and we heard this big crash, a bottle crash, and we heard the pieces of the bottle and the whole 9 yards. And everybody come rushing in to see what happened. Sure enough, the bottle had fell off, hit the tile floor, but it wasn't broken. But we heard it break.
Really?
And that was the most fascinating part of that.
Huh.
And so, anyways, and then I took lots of pictures that night, and with the people there and around. I went around and took pictures of the Adobe and everything else. Oh, man, did I have orbs. I had orbs like crazy. Everywhere. Everybody says it's dust particles and everything else. Maybe so. Anyways, that was that type of thing that me and Wally was doing. But other things came up. The reason I'm kind of talking about all this with Terry and everything else is because he just did a movie with Dan Lowe on Jesse James. Okay? Is it okay if I talk
Yeah.
like this? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, and so I watched that whole movie, and I think Dan Lowe has something there. However, he doesn't have all the facts. Paso Robles is famous in many different terms. There's hot springs. In the beginning, there's hot springs, sulfur springs, that were here in the Padre days. And they weren't just in 1 or 2 places. They were everywhere. But the big one was on the other side of Spring Street. And it had this great big oak tree growing next to it. And grizzly bears were very prominent here in the Spanish days. And many reports of grizzly bears bathing in these springs.
Really?
Yeah. And that's all historical fact. And then later on, in the gold rush, or prior to the gold rush, was the Mexican-American War. And in this cavalry unit, there were these guys that were in the big battles and became prominent men in the cavalry. But after the war was done and everything else, they returned home. They left the army. They returned home, and just almost as they got home, the gold rush, big news of the gold rush started. And so one of these guys was Drury Woodson James. And so him and his buddies that were in the Mexican-American War, okay, and I don't know if all of them were from Kentucky or from that area, okay, but somehow they were in the general area, and he sent word to them, and anyways, they came out west and to Placerville, and they started mining gold along, like with everybody and his brother, on Weber Creek. And the gold was good. And so Drury wrote his brother back in Kentucky, and his brother's name was Robert Sally James. And he was a Baptist minister. And so Drury wrote his brother, and so I don't know what mode of transportation, how he got there. But anyways, he got there probably in the end of 1848, or maybe right around I think it was 1848 he died. Anyways, no sooner he got to Placerville to mine with his brother on Weber Creek, he got sick. He got diphtheria or cholera or something, some kind of horrible ailment, and he died. Well, he had two children back east. They left with his wife. His wife was Zeralda, I'm trying to say this properly, Zeralda Cole. Anyways, and she had two boys. One, Frank was the oldest, and Jesse, he was the youngest.
Frank and Jesse James.
Frank and Jesse James,
okay.
Yeah. And I think Frank was, I think Frank was 5 years old in 1848, and I think Jesse was 1. I don't know, it's in Wally's books, and he talks about all the James family, Drury Woodson James, the founder of Paso Robles. In the year 1868 to 1869, Jesse and Frank came out to visit their Uncle Drury. Well, so the story of Drury, before he founded the town of Paso Robles, is they were all mining out on Weber Creek. And anyway, so his brother shows up and his brother dies. Almost, I don't know, within days, maybe, I don't know. And so Drury buries him. But apparently, there's, I don't know if there's cemeteries there yet or what. But Drury buries him and knows exactly where he buried him. And then might have been kept a secret, or maybe not. I mean, I don't know. But Drury knew where he was buried and nobody else did. And but what was cooking in Drury's mind, along with his buddies that he was working with, excuse me, anyways, was that there's more gold to be made selling merchandise to the miners than digging gold.
Mine the miners.
Mine the miners. And so, even though they were doing quite well in digging gold, they saw big dollar signs in this. Okay, because they were caught in the whole thing, you know, of eating and living and buying shovels that were costing a fortune and everything else. And so Drury looked at it from the beef business side. And so he'd made enough money that he broke off from that. Well, that's what his buddies did too. And they went their own separate ways. but eventually they would all become buddies again later on. And all of these guys that went their own separate ways all became big financial businessmen. Big business. Some in the railroad industry, some being a California governor, miscellaneous. Anyways, but so some went into politics, and some went into farming, and some went into railroads. Drury went into the cattle business. And anyways, so Drury got a partner for the cattle business. And that was, I can't think of the first guy's name, but it's Thompson. His last name is Thompson. Anyways, and so they picked up the La Panza Ranch from the government. And because the state of California was formed in 1850, 51, something like that. Anyways, and so they picked up this massive piece of property out in the Carrizo Plains country, okay, and or majorities in the Carrizo. Some of it's in the La Panza Mountains, which now is part of the Los Padres National Forest area. And anyways, and so they controlled 250,000 acres, 500,000 acres, maybe 1 million acres. It was a huge ranching operation.
Wow.
And they were running down south to LA, down to Mexico. They were running great big giant herds of cattle up here, fattening them up on the ranch and taking them to market, making hand over fist and money, and selling the beef to the miners, the mining industry, anybody that, you know, it was everything like you've seen in every John Wayne movie, you know, or anybody else that were making the cattle drives. That's what Drury and Thompson were doing. And they did that from about 1851 to about 1870. So, anyways, and so he had his ranch headquarters, which was not a very big adobe at all, okay, out in La Panza. It's on La Panza Ranch. One of the major things they came out to California for, okay, was so they could go to their dad's grave. And nobody knew where their dad's grave was except Drury. And so they came out, that was the main thing for the visit. And then, so when they got out here, they stayed who knows how long, several months, or maybe more than that. But Drury was taken by the sulfur springs. He'd been going there for years. And so naturally, Frank and Jesse followed suit, and Jesse had a bullet wound he was nursing, and so he would nurse his bullet wound at the Paso Robles Springs, the sulfur springs. And there's an old log cabin up Peachtree Canyon that Jesse stayed at when he came to nurse his wounds in the springs. And that's all documented, it's all true. And so anyways, then sometime later, and they were good boys when they were out here. Drury made sure the law knew was here, and Drury being one of the top guys here on the coast.
So the law knew who they was here.
Yeah.
They was good friends with Drury. He was a prominent person, and he kind of held them in check. Frank and Jesse James in check, said, "Don't be doing anything in my town."
Yep, just like that. And from everything that I know and I've read about Drury, is he was a small guy, but he was one tough, you know what. So I'll bet you if anybody was, I'll bet you if Jesse and Frank James were afraid of anybody, I'll bet you they were afraid of their uncle. And I bet you the law was too, because he was a tough customer. He was an old-time real cowboy.
So you was telling me though that Drury and his buddies that he was in the Mexican-American War with, they come out here. You was telling me though they was all Masons, and and Drury kind of built up this town here in La Panza.
After he left La Panza.
Okay, he built up the town, Drury did, and that they built all these tunnels.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to get to that.
Okay. I'm rushing you. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
So Drury's wife, she's had it with that part of the American frontier. And she wants to go someplace where it's nice and safe, and there's maybe a society, more of a community, and that type of thing. So
right now they're kind of living out on this big, huge ranch. They're the only people. They're out in the sticks. They don't have no neighbors.
They don't have any neighbors for 50, 60 miles or whatever, okay? And they're not the only ones out there. I mean, they got his partner out there. They got lots of cowboys and everything, but that's all they got, okay? They got cowboys. Now, all of this is bandit country back in those days. And there were lots of bandits in here. And anyways, and they probably had more than their share of bandits they killed along the trail, or Indians, or whatever. And anyways, his wife she had enough of it. After Frank and Jesse left, she said, no more. So he sold the ranch, and he went into cahoots with the Blackburn brothers. And I think they had the stagecoach in town, the stage stop. Seems to me they did. Or they had, somehow they acquired some property in there or something. I can't remember exactly. It's in Wally's book. But, so he bought in with the Blackburn brothers, and they bought all of the Paso Robles Township area. And there were no buildings there except for the stagecoach stop, the old Estrada building that's on Pine Street. That was built in 1860. And it probably was a saloon back then. It's a saloon today. Anyways, but there wasn't that many buildings. And I think, anyway, so he bought into all that interest and to create a town. He was the town's founder. Really, he much more than the Blackburn brothers. So his big dream is to build this grand inn that's huge, gigantic, and is super luxurious. And it's the cream of hotels in California. Well, that's what Drury was built. That was his dream, and he built it. And he advertised all over the American West for bricklayers and you name it. They came in by... Anyway, so they built this inn and everything else, okay? And they made a fortune on it. But there were other things that I found out about later on when I worked for A&R Furniture. Well, actually, it goes back when I was a cowboy for my brother Don. So we used to come into Paso, not every weekend, but a lot of weekends. But we used to come into town and party with locals in Paso Robles. Now, I'm not going to go into this story, but I just want to say for the record that during one of these times, we got invite from somebody, and we got the real visit of a real cave system running from one building to someplace else. And it was all brick lined,
Wasn't a cave system. This was a tunnel.
This was
man-made
a
tunnel
man-made tunnel system. Okay, that was architecturally bricked. Okay, with arches, alcoves, doors leading other places, and it was honeycombing underneath Paso Robles. Okay, so there's that. So I knew that when I was a cowboy. Okay, that was a kind of a secret thing I wasn't supposed to talk about. Okay, but it's just thought I'd mention it in the passing. Okay, so along about 1985, 86, something like that, and I wish I could remember this guy's name. Him and his brothers and his dad, they were all a bunch of good friends of mine, mostly because we were related through thirst. We're all beer drinkers. And they had their own construction company and everything else. And they were super hard workers, but they loved to drink beer. Anyways, one of them became the mayor of Paso Robles. And anyways, and sure enough, they were, and I can't remember how they found this, but it was up on 11th Street, and it had big rumors that there were tunnels up there. And sure enough, they'd found this tunnel, and there was a big newspaper article in the Pioneer Press. I used to have the article. Wally gave me the article. I lost it and everything else, but Wally had it. Now it's probably part of but it's a historic document of the Paso Robles paper. Anyways, and so they had a big write-up with pictures in it, and showed the picture of the tunnel and everything else. And anyways, and that was off of 11th Street, okay, which ain't too far from the Paso Robles Inn, okay. Anyways, it's actually 11th Street, and then 12th Street, the Paso Robles Inn is right there, okay, nowadays. Anyways, but back in the old days, Paso Robles Inn was huge. It was gigantic. And what happened to it? Well, in 1940 or 41, it was right before World War II started. There was a great big giant fire. And I can't remember how it started, but it burned down practically everything except for the old ballroom. The old ballroom survived the burning. Anyways, I can't remember if it was the manager or the assistant manager or one of the clerks, but he was responsible for getting everybody out of the hotel. Okay, and so nobody died in the fire. Okay, this guy, he did not die in the fire. But as soon as he got out of the out of the fire, he had a massive heart attack and died. Okay, well, it was horrible. Okay, well, guess what? He became a ghost. He's the third ghost at the Paso Robles Inn. And to this very day, maybe not to this very day, but on up to 2004 or 5. I mean, I haven't, maybe later than that. Anyways, but he's the guy that telephones certain people in certain rooms, okay, to get out of the hotel, okay, and it's happened many times.
So you're saying people that stay there get anonymous phone calls saying the place on fire, get out?
Yep, that's right.
Really?
Yeah, and the police and everything have investigated it and the whole 9 yards, and the telephone that the spirit is using does not exist.
Huh.
So it's really a mystery.
Huh.
Okay. Anyways, and then there's two more ghosts. One is kind of a mysterious ghost, and directly behind the coffee shop is where all the rooms are and everything else. And one-story, two-story rooms, and there's a big plaza there. And it seems to me that in November and December and January and February, in the early morning hours, is seen a ghost of a white lady walking in the plaza there, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And nobody knows what she's doing there or who she is, but she is seen. And maybe even photographed, I'm not even sure. The other ghost is a Chinese cook that worked in the ballroom. And I don't know much about this story. I never saw him. And I don't really know this story, except everybody and his brother knows that there was a ghost of a Chinese cook there. And so the ballroom is the surviving building from the fire. And so it was all original. Well, when I went to work for Noreen Martin at A&R Furniture, her husband, Tom Martin, he had previously bought the Paso Robles Inn from the Chandler family. We used to store furniture in the old ballroom before it was restored. Now it's been all restored and it's part of the regular hotel. But in the old ballroom, we used to store sofas in there and everything else. We didn't have any deliveries this day. We'd got all of our work done. We weren't moving furniture about in the store. Everything had been done. It was kind of a dead day, you know. And we didn't want to go home early. We needed our paychecks, you know, stuff like that. So we had to keep busy doing something. So it was just me and Ray. And Ray says, let's take the big truck and go over to the inn and we'll pretend to take an inventory. I said, okay, that sounds good. Anything to goof around. So we went on over to the ballroom, and so, you know, we're goofing around, and I'm walking around, and I'm asking Ray about the Chinese ghost, you know, and he says, oh, that's back in the kitchen area of the ballroom. And I said, where's that? He says, that's out here. And so Ray's kind of marching me towards it and everything else. And we get out there, and there's these steps and big kitchen, and then there's more steps. And we come down these steps, and there's all these boards boarded up. This great big empty kind of looking door type thing. And I asked Ray, I said, hey, what's this? And Ray says, oh, that's one of those damn tunnels. I said, tunnels? Tunnels? I said, that sounds cool. So I said, stay here. So I ran a short ways to the delivery truck. We had the flashlight in the truck. And I come back and I started kicking the boards off, and Ray goes, oh my God, don't tell me what you're doing. I said, hey, I'm just going on a little adventure. Stay cool, okay? I do this type of stuff all the time. Anyways, so he says, okay, I'll wait for you. All right, so I get in there, and it's a tunnel. And it's a tunnel just like I had seen when I was a cowboy. And it was all brick lined, arches, little alcoves, only this one was flooded. And first I started off, it was only ankle deep, and the further in I went, it got knee deep. And then it kind of opened up into other areas, and there was some old machines in there of some sort. And I think it probably was maybe some of these engines or steam boilers or something like that having to do with the old hot springs, you know.
Oh.
I mean, I don't know what they were. Everything was old and rusty and everything else. But I kept on going. The straight and narrow, okay, you always want to do that when you're in any tunnel, cave, Spanish, mine, whatever. The straight and narrow. Follow the true cross. do not vary. Otherwise you might get in trouble. So that's what I did. So I just kept on the straight and narrow. Finally, I come to a certain point to where I could hear a lot of traffic, cars, traveling over me. I was pretty deep down in there too. Anyways, it was right at that time I realized I was underneath Spring Street.
Huh.
Anyways, but it was about that time I could hear Ray yelling at me.
Okay, I want to stop you for a second.
Okay.
So you're in there.
Yeah.
How wide is these tunnels? How tall are they? You say they're bricked all the way. Is it squared? Are they rounded ceilings?
They're rounded ceilings. Okay.
They're all bricked.
They're all bricked. Yeah, and there's alcoves in there, and they're rounded. Okay.
So there's chambers going off all over the place.
Yeah.
And big long. Okay.
Yeah, and so anyway, so Ray starts yelling at me, and I figure, okay, my adventure's over. You know, it's time to go back and check inventory. So I come running back, and just as I'm running out, Ray's all excited, and oh my God, Noreen's here, you know, Noreen's here, what, you know, what are you gonna do, you know, Ray's looking at me, I'm dripping wet from the knees down, you know. Anyway, so I said, don't worry about it, I'll stay out of view, or so you talk to Noreen, and blah, blah, blah. About that time, Noreen shows up, so I didn't have a chance to escape. So she comes over to talk to Ray. Hi, Darrell, how you doing? And start talking to Ray and everything else. And then she looks at me and she sees I'm dripping wet from the knees down. And Ray starts in and he says, there's a logical explanation for this. And Noreen goes, I don't think I really want to know. So that was it. And so put the boards back up. So it's definitely a tunnel underneath the Paso Robles Inn that leads to other places. Okay, got that set aside. Okay, started doing a lot of research on this. And of course I was telling Wally about all of this stuff, because now I know. This was right at the time that I started becoming friends with Wally. And so I started telling Wally about a lot of this stuff.
About these tunnels.
About these tunnels and everything else. And there's a wide variety of miscellaneous stories. Well, they built the tunnels to during the 1920s, you know, for the booze and to run girls through these tunnels and everything. That didn't quite make sense. These things were older than that.
Huh?
These tunnels had to be older than that. They wouldn't build all this stuff just to run booze and girls through, you know. There had to be something more to this, you know.
Yeah.
Anyways, and not only that, but while working at A&R Furniture, they had basements. And one of these basements that they used for storage, okay, they were just trapdoor basements, okay, they were right in the showroom floor area, okay. Anyways, and one of these basements opened up, the steps went down, and there was nothing unusual about the basement except you could lightly see, a door that was concreted over, the outline of a door.
Yeah.
Okay, what was this door for? Where did it go? Well, okay, so anyways, forget that. Okay, next door was the flower shop. And I was good friends with everybody in the flower shop. And they had a great big old basement there. And they had two sealed doors, one coming from A&R Furniture, and on the opposite side of the wall, another sealed door of concrete going to the next building next door.
Huh.
Okay. Well, the next building next door was Norma Moy's theater building. Norma Moy, and well, I don't know whether I should say her name or not. I don't want to get her in trouble. Can you erase that?
Yeah, I can erase that.
Okay, all right. Anyways, but anyways, she, leave it in,
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
I'm thinking about it. If Norma ever saw this, she'd be tickled over it.
Okay.
Okay? Because she lives in one of the oldest Victorian houses on, isn't that stupid to me? I can't remember the name of the street. It's a famous street. Vine. It's on Vine Street. Anyways, and I had to do something for her. I was always doing something for her. She ran the events in the park and everything else, and for other things. She was like a Wally, you know, and very active in the community and everything else. And you know, she always had volunteers and everything else. I was one of the volunteers.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I can't remember what I was doing. I was helping her do something one day, and she has a ghost at her house. Okay, and she told me the whole story. And I've heard the stories from other people about Mr. Moody and everything else. Okay, but I didn't know any of this. I learned all of this afterwards. Anyways, I had to do something for Norma, and I was to go over and pick her up. Okay? Are we okay?
Yeah.
On time? Okay, so, anyway, so I drove on over there, and I didn't know, I saw her car around the side, but her front door faces Vine Street. And so anyways, I got on over there, and I parked on Vine Street, and there was this old guy standing at the front door in an old-timey dress suit. Well, if you knew Norma Moy, okay, she would go to these parties and everything else, and she'd dress up like a saloon girl, and all of her buddies would, and they'd have costume parties and everything. I just figured this was all part of it, you know.
Yeah.
Anyways, and so anyways, I got out of the car, and I was walking on up, and anyways, I said howdy to the gentleman and everything else, and he raised his hand. He acknowledged that I was there. And about that time, I could hear Norma calling me around the corner, and so I went around the corner, and I saw her, and, oh, okay, well, I got my car parked out front, and your friend, you know, I saw your friend on the front porch, you know, and she goes, who? I go, your friend, the guy dressed up in the old-timey clothes, you know, in the old, you know, turn-of-the-century business suit and everything. And she looked at me and goes, who? And I said, this guy. I said, he's on your front porch. Let's walk around. I'll show you. We walked around there, and there was nobody there. And she looks at me and goes, tell me what he looked like. So I identified him. She said, that's Mr. Moody.
Huh.
He'd been dead for 50 years or something like that. I can't remember. Anyways, that was the ghost at Norma Moy's house. And I guess only few people see him.
Huh.
I saw him. He looked quite alive to me. Anyways, so Norma had the building next door to the flower shop. And anyways, that was the old theater back in the old days. And I'm trying to remember the name of it, but anyways, I got all of these old buildings in a row, see? And they're all in pictures, okay, back in the Pioneer Museum, okay? And they got booklets, books on this stuff, lots of pictures, and you name it, okay? So, okay, the tunnels. What's the tunnels all about, okay? I'm doing research like crazy. I'm talking to everybody I know about it. Norma Moy, I'm talking to Norma Moy about it. Norma says she got this great big desk, and just like this desk, or even worse than this desk, she got papers piled and everything else. She's a very busy person. And, but, So she's got this great big desk, and she's got a chair just like this and everything else, and she's got a rug just like this and everything else. But underneath this rug, she's got like a little trap door to get underneath the building. And she tells me that she gives me permission to crawl underneath. And so I do, and I take pictures. And guess what? There's a building underneath her building.
Really?
Yeah. And I take pictures and everything else, and it's like the top of a building. That's underneath her building.
And she knew it was there? She'd been down there?
She knew it was there because of the air conditioning guys. Because they told her. Anyways.
You still got them pictures?
No, I don't think so. I may have. I'm not even sure.
Okay, yeah.
But I'll have to go through and dig all this stuff out and see if I still got them.
Yeah.
But I had them for a long time. I know I put a lot of them on Bob's site.
Oh, okay.
So Bob may have some of these.
Okay.
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 Because I talk about a lot of this stuff on Bob's
site.
I can't remember the treasure site, but you know it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I just have to call Bob and, rack his memory.
Okay.
Okay. So I do that. Well, I'm doing all this different stuff, and
so you got down in there. What did you see? What did it see? I mean, it looked like a huge building.
It looked like a top of a building, at the top of it. So if you climbed one of the old-time buildings in downtown Paso, okay, it would look just like that.
So you climbed downstairs and it looked like you was on top of it.
No, it wasn't downstairs. It was just a hole in the floor the air conditioning guys made to get in underneath the building to run airlines.
So they built this building on top of another building.
That's right.
Did you try to get inside that building?
No, there's no doors or anything. It's like adobe, or it's got bricks and adobe and concrete and whatever. So pretty soon, I'm going back and I'm telling Wally all this stuff, and Wally is getting permission to go to other places around Old Town Paso, and they have basements.
Did Wally know about this stuff before you told him?
No. Anyways, and so Wally starts talking to people, and so he's getting access to a lot of these buildings. So we're going around getting access to other people's basements, business basements, and stuff like that. And we find out that one of my favorite bars that we used to go to when I was a cowboy was John Boosie's bar. And John Boosie was quite alive, and he was quite a character. And I liked him a lot because he had basically the same disposition as I did, which was rotten. The same was true with this, when I cowboyed for my brother, he gave me this wild horse. He had a rotten disposition, of every sort. But I could stay on him, and he was one hell of a cow pony. Yeah, that was the only good. But other than that, he had a rotten disposition. Anyways, but I really liked John Boosie. He was a good guy. Well, anyways, John Boosie had one too. He had a cellar and he had a door. It went someplace. Anyways, and then we went on over.
So did you go down that cellar and that door?
No.
Okay.
We went into the cellar and found the door.
But you couldn't get in.
Couldn't get in.
Sealed off.
It was sealed off, yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, well, Caddy Corner, and this is right on, 12th, 13th, it had to be 11th Street. Okay, so 11th and Pine is another old Paso Robles sauna bath building. I can't remember the name of it. It's in these books. It's in Wally's books. All of these old. Anyways, and they have a great big basement in there. We got into there, and sure enough, they had doors leading somewhere. Now the door was still there. Big oak door with a great big lock. The biggest lock I'd ever seen in my life.
Old time locks?
Old time lock.
Old time locks. The old skeleton key type?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. But, so we never ended, but it was really cool. Yeah, it was so cool. Who would take a picture of a door? Me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had pictures of that. And it might be on Bob's site. I'm not even sure. Okay, so, anyways, but there were other buildings that we had visited and they had access to and everything else. Well, the old Estrada building is the oldest building in Paso Robles. 1860 is when it was built. It's the old false front building. And it's on Pine Street, between 12th and 13th Street. And almost directly across the street from the back of A&R Furniture. Anyway, so I became friends with those people that own it. I don't know if they own it now or not. But they lived upstairs and they ran the bar downstairs. And I think that was probably always a bar. I was wrong. Okay, because the next story I'm going to tell you about proves it. Okay, but anyways, I became friends with them and everything else, and they wondered, because I was very active in going in and out of these different buildings, these caves, or tunnels, or cellars, and stuff like that. And so I asked them point blank if I could crawl underneath their building. They said, okay. They didn't say, oh, God, there's liabilities. What would our insurance say? And everything. No, they said, go ahead. Go do it. Have fun, So I crawled underneath the building, and sure enough, they had a door. I couldn't get the door open. Over the years, mud had clogged the door. It was open halfway. It was an old-fashioned door with a porcelain handle and everything. All I could do is take a flashlight and stick my head between the door and the door jamb and look, and there were steps going on down. Okay, into the abyss.
You couldn't see how far they was going down.
No, I couldn't see how far they were going down. Anyways, and so I went underneath there about 10 times, taking a little trowel with me, trying to unlodge the door from the mud. It was impossible.
Huh.
I didn't have much space to work in.
Yeah.
It was kind of like escaping from the Nazis or something,
Yeah.
I mean, it was just real tight, Anyway, so I gave up on that. But anyways, that's not the end of the Estrada building. Okay, so I'm looking around, okay, I'm researching and everything else. So I found Wilmar Tognazzini's website, and as far as I know, it's still up and on.
What's it called? Wilmar Tognazzini?
You type in your search, into your search engine, Wilmar, Wilmar, and then Tognazzini, Tognazzini.
Okay.
Okay? So you type in his name, and it'll pop up. Anyways, but I really liked Wilmar. Anyways, he was an educator for years, but he also worked for Hearst Castle. Maybe as a tour guide or whatever. I can't remember. But anyways, he had a hobby, and his hobby was to take old newspapers and combine them and put them into books. Anyway, so on his website, he's got 4 years of the San Luis Obispo Tribune. Okay, 1896, 1897, 1898, and 1899. So I thought, well, this is going to be entertaining. Let's see what I can find in these newspapers. So I started, and it lists the daily things that happened throughout the year of 1896. And a lot of them very, very entertaining, and a lot of it very dull.
Yeah.
You know, if you click on 1897 newspaper and you scroll all the way down to August 4th, 1897, there's a very interesting article in there. And that article reads, Gold at Paso Robles. Well borers discovered quantities of the precious metal. Paso Robles, August 4th, 1897. A new Klondike is thought to have been found within the limits of this city. Has been discovered. I'm sorry, not found, but discovered within the limits of this city. But a block from its center, which is the Paso Robles Inn, but a block from its center. The discovery was made by W. Kester while boring a well on the premises of E.F. Young. Several large nuggets of metal resembling gold have been washed out and given to a jeweler to test. They are said to contain a percentage of gold. Though no satisfactory test has been made, samples will be sent to San Francisco. This well being bored, in which the substance is found, is only 2 inches in diameter, yet the nuggets and the particles and the ounce in weight were taken out. The strata in which they were found is of a kind of which gold is usually discovered. There is no doubt about the substance of it being a gold composition, and preparations have been made to sink a shaft over the find. Okay? The nuggets are large, and if they contain a sufficient amount of the precious metal, the strike will be immensely rich. That was the end of it. Okay, I had to write all this down. I tried to copy it down. Okay, I ran out of copy paper. And the damn copier, so I went out and bought more copier paper. I put it in, and went through all of that, and I had to go out and buy more copier paper and more ink. You know, that was the last time I ever tried to copy that damn thing. I finally got through that, you know. Anyways, so I decided I'm just going to write this down, you know, and so that's what I did. I wrote it down. Anyways, so that's that. Now that's evidence right there. That's from the San Luis Obispo Tribune. Okay, so what? So I took this to Wally. I said, hey, let's do our own investigation of this. Let's find out who this E.F. Young was, you know, and that's when we went to work. Okay, and sure enough, we found out who he was. He was a bricklayer from Nebraska that was married and had 3 kids. And he'd read the flyers from Drury about building the Paso Robles Inn. I don't know how he got here, by railroad or by wagon or maybe both, or what, but he got here. And he became one of the bricklayers at the Paso Robles Inn. Well, after the inn was built, he liked the area a lot. And he decided this is where he's going to stay. And so he shopped around and he bought this building on Pine Street. And he was putting in the grocery business there. And anyways, but he needed water for his grocery business. And that's when he had, instead of hauling in the water in the old wagons and everything else, okay, he needed a well drilled, and that's what he had it, and this was in his backyard. Okay, well, guess where the building is? It's the old Estrada building. Okay, and we found all of this out, RootsWeb, Ancestry.com. We went through the whole 9 yards of that, but went and saw Rosie Flynn, okay, And I wasn't really good friends with her, but I was with her husband. Her husband, Tom Flynn, okay, he had his own tree business, and he's buddies with Darrell, who was my boss at Wayne's Tires. Yeah, you know, everybody's friends is related to other friends, and he was a good Irishman, and when I knew him, he was a pretty good drinker too. Anyways, he's a great guy. I see him every once in a great while, but you know, the town is so big now, you don't really get to see anybody you know used to know. But anyways, so we went to Rosie Flynn. She was the manager or assistant manager, I can't remember, at the Paso Robles graveyard. And we got some information from her because we found E.F. Young. He actually was buried there, but, well, I take it back, how he died and everything. Well, so after this and there's nothing else in the Tribune. I've been searching and everything, and they don't say anything after that. So we went around and we found out that his real name was Erastus F. Young. And we found it in we found the street address and everything else in, I think it was Roots Web, you know, and also surveys, you know. I'm trying to think of, you know, the U.S. Consensus Survey. I think it's that. I don't know exactly. Wally dug up a lot of this stuff. Anyways, because he was really good at that stuff too. Anyways, and what happened, make a long story short, is so there was gold, and he was sinking the shaft. He screwed the grocery business. Yeah, gold mine. Yeah. See? And so he was putting a shaft in there. Well, at some point in time, and I used to have the dates on the gravestones of his first wife. Well, his first wife and two young children, they died almost shortly after this find. I don't know what they died from. Probably disease, or he didn't kill them or anything. It wasn't anything like that. Yeah. They died from some kind of cholera, diphtheria, or something. And anyway, so he got married again. Well, anyways, and so it was around 1902 or 1903. He'd been married the second time, and he was mining his well, is what he was doing. Anyways, in 1904, he drowned in it.
In his well?
In his well.
Oh.
His gold mine.
Oh.
Well, gold mine, same thing. Anyways, and so the official thing on the on the death records that Rosie got for us was the official cause of death was dropsy. Okay, which back in those days was basically drowning in a closed environment. So, anyways, and so he died, and at first he was buried next to his first wife. His second wife did not like that at all, so she had him dug up and shipped off to San Francisco to a Catholic cemetery. Anyways, and so he's buried up there now. Anyways, and so the story kind of ends from there.
She never tried to find where his gold mine is, or did anybody else try to dig it after he drowned, or you don't know that, or?
I don't know that.
Okay.
Okay, but we weren't quite yet done, because we had ordered, I'm trying to think of the name of this company. They're insurance maps. They're very famous. And I'm trying to remember the name of it, but they were a very big insurance company, and they went around from town to town and city to city, And they took surveys of buildings and outhouses, and even if you threw your trash away, they surveyed that. Okay, and everything else. And I'm trying to think of the name of it right now. But anyways, Wally found it, and I ordered the maps. And I ordered, there was a series of 4 of them, but they were not consecutive in years, but they went from 1900 to 1910. Anyways, in one of the maps, we found the spot of where the will was.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so we knew exactly where it was. And so I had the information and everything else. And so we drove on over to the back of, there's an alley between Penn Jewelers and the Estrada building. There's a little alley there where people can drive in and out, you know, from Railroad Street to Pine Street. Anyways, so we went in there just to do a little look-see. I knew the people, you know, but first I wanted to look and everything else. I was going to tell them, you know, that they had a gold mine in the backyard, you know. It was all paved over.
Oh.
Yeah. So, what the hell? Somewhere in the backyard now. Okay, so this is a nice big book. This is History of San Luis Obispo County with illustrations. So this is all very good. And of course, all of the gold mines in La Panza is in it. Everything that was known about Drury James is in it. And Jesse James and Frank James is in it. Tells all of the histories about James, about Drury James and everything else. Well, guess what? Drury James was a Freemason.
Ah.
Okay? And he belonged to the Knights of Pythias. Okay? Along with most of the town's leading members of the community, not just the Paso Robles area, but also Atascadero, all the way down San Luis Obispo, everything else. And James Drury becomes a major figure here on the Central Coast. He also owns banks. Okay, he goes into all different kinds of stuff. Okay, but he's also, it says here, in 1855, he joined the Independent Order of the Odd Fellows at Michigan Bar in Sacramento County, and is now a member of the San Luis Obispo Lodge, and has also entered apprentice as a Mason. Now, I find this all very interesting, only because we're going to go back to Dan Lowe's video. Okay. Because when I first watched it, I thought, am I going to like this video or what? You know, let's see what Dan has to say about this.
So, and just to refresh, in case anybody hasn't seen it, this is Dan Lowe talking about Jesse James, how he wasn't killed like they said in the history books, how he moved out west, became a prominent person himself, assumed a bunch of different aliases, and worked for the KGC, the Knights of the Golden Circle, to help the South regain its whatever they was trying to. That South win the war again.
That's right.
The war.
Yeah.
But then it got thwarted because of the Spanish and American War, and that kind of united all the states together with that war, and so it kind of died out after that. But okay.
Keep on talking.
I'm done.
Oh, you're done. Okay. Okay, so, anyways, so he talks a lot about all of the Mason societies in here. And Drury is very popular and very active in all of these societies. And so is his buddies and his brother-in-laws. And it just goes on and on. Anyways, so this is a prized piece of evidence right here. If anybody says baloney or GPS or whatever, okay, this is a good book to have. Okay, so Wally's book and all this material right here, okay, I'm going to loan to Terry here, and he can on loan, okay, he'll give it back to me someday.
Yeah.
Okay, anyways, and he can take this to Dan Lowe, and Dan Lowe can review it if he wants to, and if he doesn't, he can give it back to Terry, whatever. Anyways, okay?
Okay.
All right, cool.
Sounds good.
Okay,
So-
okay,
go ahead.
so anyways, when I was finding out a lot of this information, and anyways, I was also talking to Bob Brewer, and Bob Brewer, he was, seems to me he was known as Hillbilly Bob, yeah. But he was one of the guys, or maybe the premier. I'm not even sure. I don't know. I was just starting out on this, but he knew a lot about the KGC, and he had written a couple books, and I bought one. I think it's called the Sentinel or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
But I talked to him on the phone several times, and also on the computer. I showed him pictures, and I might have even sent him some stuff. I'm not even sure. But and there's this one Centennial magazine that they Paso Robles put out in the 1980s, I guess. Centennial, that's 100 years, right? So
Yep.
yeah, it's probably in the 80s. I'm not sure. But anyways, it has this big front page of nothing but a picture showing 13th or 12th Street of the 4th of July parade, and the bottom of it has the old Alexander Hotel. Okay, well, the Alexander Hotel became A&R Furniture in later years. And and in line are all these other businesses, okay, that I went through and found all these doors and everything else, okay. Anyways, and so I know I either sent that magazine or picture to Bob Brewer, or somehow he saw it. I told him about it, and he picked it apart in pieces and told me that even though it was a 4th of July thing, there was so much evidence in there that there was KGC in there. And he told me point blank that Paso Robles is one of the biggest hot spots in California for the KGC.
Really?
Yeah. And now I'm thinking, who really was Drury James? See, because I'm going back to these tunnels. I'm going back to the gold discovery, and everything else, and all these tunnels intersect. They're all honeycombed. Were they mining gold secretly? Somehow? Did they start out mining gold, then all of a sudden they clamped it down all amongst the town businessmen and everything, and tried to keep it a secret, or what was going on? They're sitting on the gold mine. Why would they build buildings on top of a gold mine? And of course, Drury James was a gold miner.
Huh?
He was a gold miner from Weber Creek in Placerville. He buys a ranch and sitting on the gold mine in La Panza.
Huh.
This guy knows a lot about gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he moves to Paso Robles, and there's gold found in Paso Robles. Wherever he goes, there's gold. Something funny there, man. It happens twice. That's a coincidence. Happens 3 times? I don't know. Is that a coincidence? Does it happen any more times?
So these tunnels, you tracked down that they went a long ways underneath the city.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and so
Did anybody have speculation? Well, I guess they did. They speculation for the Prohibition years, but you thinking they was made way, way before the Prohibition era.
Yeah.
They was made when they built that town. They had to have been.
right. Yeah,
And
before they built the buildings.
yeah,
Okay. Before they built the buildings.
in the 1800s.
Yeah, yeah. So the town was not incorporated in Paso Robles. It's in Wally's book. Let me look at it real quick.
While you're looking for that, so I just want to say
Okay.
that I think there is a bunch of these towns that has these. It must have been a thing back in the late 1800s to build these passageways, underground systems, because you're here in California, I'm in Utah, and I just just a few months ago I was talking to somebody in the city of Ogden, Utah. They say that they have the same type of thing, these passageways that goes from business to business clear out to the railroad yard.
Yeah. Well, and you stop and we were talking about old Seattle. That's underneath Seattle. Okay, and they give tours. Okay, anyway.
Well, they have passageways there, and
Yeah,
the
and-
underground tunnels, and
and they have 2- and 3-story buildings.
Really?
Yeah. Anyways, and so if you think that's wild, well, guess what? So does Old Town Sacramento.
Huh?
And you think, well, Old Town Sacramento. Okay, well, there's even. You ever watch Ghost Adventures on TV?
I haven't.
Okay, well, anyways, they do some ghost adventures in the old town underneath Sacramento.
Ah.
Anyways, I didn't know it until I was watching it one day and thought, hey, this is like Paso. Anyways, it turns out that Fresno has the same thing. Anyways, so a lot of these old towns were building towns on top of their towns. There's a memorial of Drury James that's in the city park right next to the Historical Society building, which is the old library. Anyway, so that's his monument. He did not die in Paso Robles. He died in the fire. Him and his wife died in the fire in San Francisco at another hotel, and I think that was during the earthquake in Frisco.
Ah.
I'm not sure. Anyway, so it's got lots of pictures of all of the old buildings in Paso. Just, you name it. Anyways, Wally's got a big plaque in here, and I think the town was incorporated in 1881. It seems to me that was it. Anyways, I can't find it, but it's in the book. Anyways, so it was basically 1850s to 1870. It was a stage stop. Okay, and then a few buildings were put up, like the old Estrada building that was put up in 1860. Okay, but now think back. If that building was built in 1860, okay, and it's got, underneath the building, it's got a door that has steps going down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, they did not put that in after the building was built.
Yeah.
So what was going on there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, okay. So now I'm coming to the big clincher of it. Okay.
Oh, let's hit a big clincher.
Okay, and this is really good too. I love Wally for this, okay, because he really knew how to get all this information. That guy just knew everybody and how to make people want to give him stuff.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, and stuff that's really hard to get hold of. That's like almost guarded secrets and everything else. Anyways, but Wally got it. Anyways, and I kept harping Wally on it until he got it, and he did get it. Anyways, when you go to the old Paso Robles Pioneer Museum and you look at Old Town Paso Robles, they got bird's eye views of the entire town. And they got views from up in the hills looking down 13th Street all the way down to the Salinas River. And really beautiful pictures, and very precise, and close-up pictures, and everything else. Okay. Anyways, and there was no 13th Street Bridge. There was a bridge over the Salinas River that they built and rebuilt and kept washing out, and they built and rebuilt. And then between rebuilding it, actually they would just run their teams of wagons through the sand, and then they'd build a bridge, and then the Salinas would flood again, and you know, that type of thing. But the 13th Street Bridge that goes over the freeway, there was no such thing. That was all flat. That went all the way out to the river. So why is there a 13th Street Bridge? So when you're traveling from the south going north, okay, and vice versa, when you're coming from the north traveling to the south, there's a great big gradual dip like this, and it goes under the 13th Street Bridge, which is right here. It goes down and then it goes up like that. Okay? Anyways, so Wally got the plans for the immediate freeway right there. And I don't know who he got them from or whatever. But see, we found out that there was a cave, a tunnel.
A man-made tunnel.
A man-made tunnel, and this was a big one because they could drive wagons through it.
Wow.
A team of horses and wagons.
Really?
Yeah. And it ran from Pine Street all the way down to the river. And so the Paso Robles Water Works is on Paso Robles Street, which is the end of the street, and just on the other side of that is the river. And so the Paso Robles Water Works is right on the corner of 13th Street and Paso Robles Street. And just on the other side of it are all these great big giant concrete blocks from other buildings they've destroyed or roads they dug up and everything else, and they're all piled in this one spot right next to the bridge. Well, guess what? I had a buddy that worked there, okay? And he told me, it's the cave, the tunnel. That's where it is. That's where it comes out at.
They broke into the tunnel there, and so I had to take it underneath right there. And
anyways, yeah, and so the tunnel came out into the Salinas River right there. It was big enough for a team of horses and wagons.
From the river, I'm not familiar with this area. So is the Salinas River a big river? I mean, they take boats up it?
No. It's a dry river most of the time. But it's the river actually runs, but it runs underneath the ground. Okay.
So why would you think they would have the river going out there to the river? An escape route or something, or
maybe. I don't know.
Smuggler's route in.
Could be.
Huh.
I don't know. But that's where a big tunnel, and it ran directly down, almost like underneath the sidewalks, okay, or underneath the buildings, underneath the roads, and it ran on down where the 13th Street Bridge is, okay, just pretend it was underneath that 13th Street Bridge, okay, and kept on going, and crossed Paso Robles Street to where the Paso Robles Water Works is now, and in between, on the backside of the building and the bridge is where they put all of these giant...
The bricks and stuff they got out of there.
Concrete boulders.
Huh.
Okay, I mean, these aren't small. They made sure nobody was going to get in to there.
Wow.
Okay, and they're right there for anybody to see. You know, all they have to do is walk across the bridge, stop, take pictures. That's it, right there, okay? That's the proof, okay? All right. Well, is that really the proof? Oh, there's one more. One more big proof. Remember that big dip underneath 13th Street Bridge? Okay. Well, Wally had the plans on that. Okay. When they were building their freeway, they could not compromise putting a freeway over the top of this tunnel because it would collapse. Plain and simple.
Yeah.
Okay? So they had to destroy this tunnel. And that's the reason there's a big dip right there.
Huh.
See? And so they destroyed the tunnel. Then they put steel doors off on the each side of the freeway, you can see.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. That just happened to align with the old waterworks. Anyways, but anyway, so Wally found all the plans to the freeway, built in 53 or 54, something like that. Anyway, so he had all the plans. We went through the whole deal and everything else, and so that's the reason that big dip is right there. And the 13th Street Bridge goes across.
Yeah.
They could not compromise building a freeway over that.
Yeah.
Okay. And yet, when you go to the Paso Robles Museum and you look at all of the old pictures, it's flat, straight flat across that. Okay. To the river.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, did you get to do very much exploring into these tunnels, or did you get stopped a lot of times?
I got stopped most of the time.
So you never. So there's a lot of it that hasn't been explored for probably not a lot of people know about these.
Probably not. But you know, there was this earthquake in Paso Robles. I was gone. I was working down south. It was after my dad died. I'm going to say 2003, 2004. My mom was living over in Quail Run at the time. And anyway, so there was this big earthquake. Anyways, the old Blackburn building on the corner of 12th and Park, it collapsed. And completely collapsed. And it's all rebuilt now to what it used to look like. That collapsed. Well, they put a great big chain link fence around where all of the buildings collapsed. Okay? But they did something really funny. They canvassed off all of the chain link fence so you couldn't see into there. Why would they do that?
Oh.
You know, why would they why would they put a great big canvas on the inside of this chain link fence?
How tall was the fence? 8 foot? 6 foot?
It was about 6 foot tall. Okay, they should have built it a little bit taller because I could look over it and I could take pictures of it. And guess what?
What?
Inside from the building, you could see doors leading into other buildings.
Really?
Yeah. Anyways, and I know from other people, Penn Jewelers used to be in that building. Okay. And I know from talking to other people, okay, that, yes, indeed, there were other doors on the opposite side on 12th Street. Okay. And one went into where the City of Commerce is right now. Okay, well that used to be a really large building when I was a kid. That was Smith and Sons or Smith and Smith Guns and Jewelry or something like that. It was one of my favorite stores when I was a kid.
Jewelry, right?
No, it wasn't jewelry. It was the gun collection he had in there. They had lever actions like crazy. I know lots of other old rifles, but like crazy, all against the walls in there. You know, it was one of those old-timey gun stores.
Yeah.
You know, I sold jewelry in there, but it was mostly guns and ammo and stuff like that. Anyways, so Anyways, this all goes back to the KGC thing. The name of the town is, it's a Spanish name, El Paso de Robles, okay? The Pass of Oaks, okay? That is the big giveaway. That's what Bob Burr said. Oaks. This is one of the big flares in KGC, one of the big things,
So possibly Frank and Jesse James coming out here to visit their uncle had a lot to do with the Knights of the Golden Circle, if they were really involved with that, and there was a lot to do here, and they had...
It's a matter of conjecture.
Yeah.
But,
Interesting.
It's interesting.
So, do you think, man, you could somehow get permission to get into one of these tunnels again today to take me exploring? Or you think, man, it's been so long, and you think it'd be pretty tough without Wally's help? Or...
Well, Wally's been dead.
Yeah.
Since 2012.
Yeah.
And I really, don't get around much anymore.
Yeah.
Most of the townspeople that I know are gone.
Yeah.
But I could see if I could find I don't know, I'll have to shop around and see.
Yeah. Man, I'd love to try and get in one of them tunnels.
Yeah, me too.
Me and you, man, with torches.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. Anyways, and so I'd like to try something like that.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Cool.
I'm sure with other people finding out about them when they built that was in the 50s, though, you said. I'm sure, though, some other people has had to be down in there, but maybe not.
Maybe not. I don't know.
That
Anyways,
would be cool to explore.
Yeah, it would be. Now I'll tell you something else, too. And I completely forgot about this until we really got into it and everything. And I wasn't here when it happened. I was in transition. I was either in the service or out of the service, working down south, or something else was happening. I was in Paso Robles when it happened. I think it was around 71 or 72. Okay. But shortly afterwards, I came up here, and everybody told me about it, and it was in the newspaper and everything else. Okay. Anyways, I had a friend that I had known, since I was 14, 15 years old. He'd come on out to the ranch, and we'd shoot squirrels together and everything else. And he lived just off of, trying to think of it's where the college is now, Cuesta College. Can't think of the name of this street. Anyways, a real good guy. Anyways, and he was here when it all happened. In fact, he was there in the park when it happened. And right next to the Rexall drugstore, okay, George Thorlson's place, Rexall drugstore, okay, I'm not going to go into it. Anyways, there was a smoke shop there, okay, and the whole building blew up. And blew up during the day.
Wow.
And blew up, blew the building and everything into the park and along the street, obliterated it.
Huh.
And the fire department came and everything else, and it was written up in the newspaper that it was a gas leak. Okay? Well, my buddy, okay, I had known ever since I was a kid, said, well, he says, maybe it was a gas leak. He says, really funny about that gas leak. He said, I was in the park, and I heard it, and I saw it blow up and everything else, and everybody was running around and everything else, and before the cops and fire department showed up and everything else, he said, I picked up 3 different barrels, and 3 or 4 different cylinders, and a couple other pistols, and they were all old.
Really?
They were all old stuff. And he says, they weren't selling guns in this smoke shop. where did all this stuff come from?
Huh?
Anyways, and he said he just threw them in his car. Then he didn't tell anybody or anything else. So where
See?
did all of these old guns come from?
Huh?
And now I'm saying to myself, KGC.